Most car buyers think banned cars means exotic imports or shady modifications. But what if I told you that dozens of mainstream vehicles, cars you see every single day, are about to vanish from the market in 2026? Not because they're outdated, but because they can't meet the new emissions and safety requirements coming into force next year. And here's the part car dealerships hope you never find out. Some of these models are being quietly discontinued behind the scenes without announcements, without marketing, and without warning. If you buy one in 2025, you might end up owning a vehicle that becomes unsupported, unserviceable, and nearly impossible to maintain. Picture signing a finance contract on what you think is a great deal, only to discover months later that your new car was discontinued quietly, parts are drying up, and resale value collapses as soon as word spreads. And trust me, some of the names on this list aren't cheap, outdated sedans. They're major brands, luxury models, and even beloved performance icons. The number one ban on this list will shock you. A legendary American nameplate that has been on US roads for half a century, and 2026 will be the year it disappears due to a single regulatory change. In this video, we're counting down the bans, discontinuations, emissions casualties, and regulatory executions coming in 2026. Some of these cars are vanishing because they can't pass new greenhouse regulations, others because their platforms are too old to support modern safety features, and a few are being cut because they've become outright liabilities for the companies building them. If you're planning to buy something in the next year, you need to watch this entire list. This isn't entertainment, it's your shield against making a $40,000 mistake. Starting with number 10, the BMW X4. Boy, BMW is pulling the plug on its coupe-style compact SUV. Not because it failed, but because the company is restructuring production for the EV-dominant decade ahead. The Spartanburg facility that builds many of BMW's US market SUVs is shifting resources toward high-demand electrified vehicles, and the X4 became expendable. It's the perfect example of a corporate execution, a model that isn't dangerous but no longer profitable to build in a tightening emissions market. For owners, the long-term impact hits slowly. Parts remain available at first, but specialty components like the sloped rear glass, specific interior trim pieces, and M40i exclusive modules become scarce. And as dealer training shifts to EVs, support for the X4 fades. In 5 years, owning this car might feel like maintaining an orphan product from a brand too busy chasing electric margins to care. Number 9. The Cadillac XT6. Podded hoped the XT6 would fill the gap between the Escalade and the XT5, but consumers didn't bite. Sales stalled and luxury buyers were unimpressed by the interior materials compared to German rivals. Rather than spend millions updating an aging platform in a segment with brutal competition, GM decided to kill the XT6 quietly and convert its factory to EV production. It's not emissions bans that are killing this SUV, it's business math. The XT6 becomes a victim of an industry where a 3-row gas SUV that doesn't sell can't justify its own production line. The danger for buyers is twofold: poor resale value and declining parts support. Once the assembly line shuts, the corporate spotlight moves on. Cadillac techs retrain for EV platforms. XT6 owners are left clinging to a discontinued chassis with declining resale and rising maintenance costs. The car isn't unsafe, but its financial future is a cliff. Number 8, the Cadillac XT4. And here the story gets darker. The XT4 isn't dying because of slow sales, it's being pushed aside by electrification mandates. The factory that once built the XT4 is being reconfigured to produce the revived Chevrolet Bolt EV and Cadillac's upcoming Optic electric SUV. This is the first wave of the affordability crisis hitting US car buyers in 2026. The XT4 was one of Cadillac's cheapest entry points, a gateway into the luxury world. When that model disappears, the new entry point becomes an electric SUV costing thousands more. The ban here isn't about emissions failure, it's about regulatory pressure redirecting manufacturing capacity toward EVs, no matter the cost. The people who used to afford the XT4 won't be able to afford its electric successor. This leaves buyers squeezed out of the new car market and forced into used vehicles that, according to federal crash data, are statistically less safe. Number 7, the Subaru Legacy. Subaru's final remaining sedan is being cut after the 2025 model year, marking the end of an era. Unlike Subaru's successful crossovers, the Legacy has been quietly underperforming for years. But the ban coming in 2026 isn't about sales, it's about fuel economy rules. The Legacy's aging platform can't meet the new emissions and efficiency requirements without a costly redesign Subaru isn't willing to make. So the sedan that once helped define Subaru's all-wheel drive identity will vanish. Owners face the same danger all discontinued sedans face: accelerated depreciation. As leases expire and fleets offload aging units, used market supply spikes. Prices fall, owners who bought new will see thousands evaporate. evaporate. And because Subaru will now focus entirely on crossovers and EV development, legacy-specific parts and expertise will fade quickly. It's not banned because it's a bad car, it's banned because sedans aren't worth saving in a market obsessed with SUVs. Number 6. The Kia Soul. And here's where the story shifts from business decisions to cultural consequences. The Soul is being pushed out not because it's unpopular, but because it is too cheap. With 2026 regulations tightening fuel economy standards and pushing manufacturers toward costly electrification, cheap gas-powered cars are being sacrificed first. The Soul once represented accessible, dependable transportation for millions. Young buyers, first-time owners, families on tight budgets. That entire demographic is now being priced out. The Soul's replacement will be electric and significantly more expensive. The ban of the Soul is the ban of affordability. When manufacturers eliminate their cheapest models to hit emissions targets, the cost of entry into the new car market rises, and those who would have bought a Soul will end up in decades-old used cars, vehicles that federal crash data shows are far less safe in real-world collisions. This isn't just a car being banned. It's an entire tier of buyers being pushed out of the new car market. Number 5. The Audi A7 and S7. This is the first point in the list where things start to feel real, because this isn't a slow-selling model or a budget car being sacrificed. This is a flagship luxury fastback, a prestige symbol in Audi's lineup. And yet the A7 and S7 are being phased out, not because they failed, but because their engines do. The current V6 and V8 platforms can't meet Europe's escalating emissions requirements or the tightening US greenhouse gas rules for 2026. Updating these engines would cost Audi millions, and the company knows the future is electric. So instead of redesigning the powertrains, they're killing the gas versions entirely and preparing to bring back the A7 name as a fully electric model later in the decade. This creates a strange financial limbo for owners. On one hand, the current A7 becomes the last of its kind, the final gas-powered version of a legendary nameplate. On the other hand, the EV reboot means all current versions will be seen as outdated the moment Audi unveils the electric successor. The result is unpredictable depreciation, unpredictable part support, and unpredictable long-term value. And when a luxury brand becomes unpredictable, owners pay the price. The A7 and S7 aren't dangerous cars, but the regulatory axe is falling on them anyway. Number 4. The Audi A4 and S4. This one hits deeper because the A4 has defined the compact luxury sedan segment for decades, but 2026 will be the year the A4 as we know it disappears. Not because buyers don't want it, not because it's unsafe, but because the internal combustion A4 cannot be updated cheaply enough to meet the next emissions standard. Audi is doing something clever but brutal. They're discontinuing the gas-powered A4, then relaunching the name later as a higher-priced electric model. It's brand preservation without brand continuity. Current owners get caught in the crossfire. The A4 was always the entry point into Audi Prestige, the attainable luxury sedan, but its electric revival will come with a much higher price tag, instantly elevating the A4 into a different demographic. That means older A4s will fall into the same trap as aging BMW sedans, heavily depreciating as buyers shift their excitement toward the new electric version. If you own an A4 or S4 today, you may believe you're holding a future classic. But the truth is harder. Once the EV version arrives, the older models will feel like artifacts of a discontinued era, and collectors don't flock to base sedans. They disappear into the used market, dropping thousands year after year. Number 3. The Porsche 718 Cayman and Boxster. Porsche fans have known this was coming, but few expected it to happen so soon. The gasoline-powered 718 models, some of the most iconic driver's cars ever built, are being phased out to make room for a fully electric successor. This isn't just a ban, it's a generational shift. Porsche is eliminating one of the purest platforms in the world, a perfect mid-engine chassis, nearly flawless weight distribution, and surgical steering, and replacing it with an electric version that will be heavier, more complex, and entirely different to drive. This is where the financial disaster begins. Many buyers believe the last gas-powered Cayman or Boxster will skyrocket in value, but the depreciation numbers already prove otherwise. The market isn't treating them as collector's items, not yet, and the longer buyers wait for the electric version, the more pressure gets applied to the outgoing gas models. Porsche's marketing machine will shift all its momentum to the electric 718, pushing the older models into the shadows. Only the very last limited editions will appreciate. Everything else, it's just a rapidly aging sports car with rising maintenance costs and shrinking demand. A lot of enthusiasts hoping for future value are about to learn a painful lesson. Before we move into the top 2 categories, understand this. The remaining bans aren't just individual vehicles. They are symptoms of the largest automotive shift in 50 years. What you're about to hear isn't just a list, it's a transformation of the entire American market. The final entries aren't discontinued models, they aren't slow sellers, they aren't niche sports cars. What's coming next affects millions of owners, entire brands, and entire categories of vehicles most drivers assumed would survive forever. Number 2, the Chevrolet Malibu. This is more than a discontinuation, it's the symbolic burial of the American sedan. The Malibu has survived 6 decades of economic shocks, oil crises, recessions, and corporate restructures, yet it cannot survive 2026. General Motors ran the numbers, looked at the emissions penalties coming next year, and discovered the brutal truth. The Malibu's aging platform is a liability. The engine and CVT combination can't meet the 2026 efficiency standards without a total redesign, and redesigning a dying segment isn't just expensive, it's suicidal. So GM is shutting the Malibu down after the 2025 model year, not because they want to, but because the emissions rules leave them no choice. What replaces it? The new Chevrolet Bolt EV. In fact, the exact factory that once produced the Malibu is already being retooled to build the Bolt. That's how final this execution is. The message from GM is clear: sedans don't matter anymore. If the platform can't hit the greenhouse targets, it's gone. But here's the danger most buyers don't see coming. When the Malibu dies, every remaining unit on dealership lots instantly turns into an orphan. Parts will become harder to source. Specialists trained to work on the Malibu will be retrained for EV platforms. And when the used market becomes flooded with lease returns in 2026, Malibu resale values are going to collapse. The car that defined Chevrolet's lineup for decades is being sacrificed to clear the runway for electric compliance. Its ban marks the moment the mainstream sedan becomes an endangered species. Number 1, the Jeep Wrangler. And this is where the conversation shifts from emissions and economics to safety. For nearly 2 decades, the Wrangler has battled a defect so notorious, so violent, and so terrifying that the name has become legend. The death wobble. It isn't a myth, it isn't a rumor, it's a real documented, federally investigated steering failure that can turn a highway drive into a life-threatening event in a matter of seconds. So the death wobble occurs when the front suspension gets upset, usually by hitting a bump at 60 or 70 miles per hour. What happens next is chaos. The steering wheel rips violently left and right. The front axle oscillates uncontrollably. Drivers describe the experience as a complete loss of control, as if the entire vehicle is about to tear itself apart. And here's the terrifying part: it's not limited to modified Wranglers. It affects stock models too, especially the 2007-2018 JK generation and the early 2018-2020 JL models. And HTSA has investigated this defect multiple times. Thousands of owners have filed formal complaints. Multiple class action lawsuits are still active, and despite years of technical service bulletins, steering damper replacements, and software patches, the core structural issue remains: weak welds, poor tolerances, and suspension geometry that simply cannot handle real-world stress. Fiat Chrysler has issued customer satisfaction notifications instead of real recalls because a recall would acknowledge the defect as systemic. 2026 becomes the breaking point. New stability and steering safety regulations coming into effect next year make the Wrangler's existing architecture non-compliant without major re-engineering. And Jeep has no choice, the old suspension design must be retired. This doesn't mean the Wrangler name disappears, but the current architecture, the one with the death wobble history, is effectively banned. Production of the older geometry ends, compliance forces Jeep to rebuild the next generation from the ground up. Owners, this means one thing: the value of older Wranglers is about to crash. Insurance companies are factoring in the wobble risk. Buyer confidence is weakening, and with tightened safety regulations making the old design obsolete, the financial fallout lands squarely on the people who still own them. The Wrangler isn't just being updated, it's being legislated out of existence. The most iconic off-roader in America is being forced into retirement by a combination of engineering failure and government safety law. That's why it takes the top spot, the only vehicle on this list not just discontinued but fundamentally disqualified. Before we finish, understand this: the vehicles you've seen so far are only the beginning. What's happening in 2026 isn't a typical model refresh cycle. It's a historic purge, a once-in-a-generation reset of the American automotive landscape. Sedans are disappearing. V8 performance cars are collapsing under emissions pressure. Cheap gas cars are being replaced by expensive EVs, and entire categories are being outlawed by regulations most buyers don't even know exist yet. Number 1 on this list isn't just a single car or a luxury badge or even a performance icon. The biggest ban of 2026 is the quietest, most devastating shift happening in the entire automotive world: the extinction of the American sedan. And this ban isn't coming from a boardroom or a CEO announcement or a lack of demand. It's coming from the collision of emissions laws, corporate strategy, and a market that has completely abandoned the segments that once carried this country. The Ford Fusion is gone. The Chrysler 300 is gone. The Chevy Impala is gone. And now, with the death of the Chevrolet Malibu in 2025, one of the last remaining American-built sedans will vanish. The Subaru Legacy, one of the last affordable all-wheel drive sedans, is ending as well. These cars weren't just transportation, they were the backbone of American commuting for 70 years. They were the vehicles families trusted for long road trips, the cars teenagers learned to drive in, the cars police departments and rental fleets relied on. But in 2026, they officially become obsolete. Here's why. First, American sedans can't hit the 2026 greenhouse gas target without major platform redesigns. That means multi-billion-dollar investments for cars that no longer sell in large enough numbers to justify the cost. Second, SUVs and crossovers have taken over the market entirely. Consumers want ground clearance, space, tech, and a sense of safety, things sedans struggle to offer in the age of aggressive utility vehicles. Third, EV mandates are forcing automakers to convert factories. Any sedan platform that doesn't directly support EV architecture is being shut down permanently. The result, the American sedan isn't just being discontinued, it's being legislated, regulated, and economically pushed out of existence. Buyers who prefer low seating positions, simple mechanics, and affordable pricing are being forced into SUVs or EVs whether they want them or not. And once the Malibu and Legacy disappear, the only sedans left will belong to Japanese luxury brands or German premium segments, price brackets that most Americans can't touch. What's happening in 2026 isn't a refresh, it's a funeral. And it's happening quietly, with most buyers unaware that the car style that defined American roads for generations is entering its final days. And here's the part you need to understand. Every ban on this list represents something larger than a discontinued model. These bans are the first phase of a sweeping transformation. Factories are shifting, powertrains are disappearing, segments are collapsing. The rules that shaped the last century of automotive design no longer apply. In 2026, the industry resets, not with a single announcement, but with dozens of quiet eliminations happening behind the scenes. Your favorite model might survive, but the world it lived in is being erased piece by piece. So before you buy anything in the next year, learn the landscape. Look beyond the dealership pitch. Ask yourself whether the car you're considering is part of the future or part of the phase-out. In 2026, the line between those two is razor thin, and the people who don't pay attention are the ones who end up holding keys to vehicles that no longer have a place on the road. If you made it this far, you're already ahead of most buyers. You understand the shift happening beneath the surface. You recognize how quickly this industry is changing. Car companies won't warn you when a model is about to disappear. Dealerships won't tell you when a platform is on its last breath, but you know now. And that knowledge protects you, your wallet, your safety, and the next vehicle you bring home. Stay sharp, stay informed, and don't let anyone sell you a car that's already halfway to extinction.